Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Council Matters. I'm Mick FitzGerald. Our guest this morning is North Inner City Councillor Gary Gannon, who we are going to welcome back. So Gary, welcome back again.
Thank you very much, Mick. Delighted to be here.
Yes, Gary, 6 months in, I'm just wondering, how are you finding it? Has it been what you expected it to be?
Yes, it has been what I'm expected to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm finding it. You know, it's difficult, it's a bureaucratic nightmare at council level, but it's also kind of interesting. Every day is a learning experience, and I suppose the important things for me is what takes place outside of the council, outside of City Hall.
Yeah.
So,
that's what I was going to come to, Gary, is that what I particularly notice, because it's something I would watch every month, is the council meetings.
Oh God!
How much of it is does that reflect what your role is, and what percentage of that? I mean, and how much of it actually happens behind the scenes?
What happens in the council doesn't reflect my role at all, and nor did I expect when I went in. But that's, I suppose, it's individual to the eye of the beholder, so to speak. For me in the North Inner City, a lot of my work is based on answering the phone and acting upon that. What happens in me clinics, kind of representing people to the council more than representing people at council level. Yeah.
And how did you feel if you heard it last week when a Fine Gael TD was saying, the North Inner City doing too well represented, too much lobbying on behalf of their constituents.
We're paying for the ghost of Beardy and others. I heard that, and it's actually a sentiment which I've heard before. It's based on the fact that people aren't really ingratiated. These people aren't in the North Inner City. Yeah. They have these conversations in the canteen of Leinster House, and they think they're based on fact. It's absolutely no way true. Yeah. It's in the inner city, we still have gross inequality, we still have deprivation, going to third level education still isn't the norm.
No, when I heard that, I thought, this brings me back to the school days, because we had several Christian brothers. I won't go into names or anything like that, but they almost seemed to, the closer you came from O'Connell Street, or came to O'Connell Street, they picked on those kids, So I was from Fairview. The kid from East Wall got a worse time than me, and the kid from Ballybock got a worse time again. It was almost like there was an inbuilt prejudice of those from outside the city. But another way. It's like that. It hasn't gone away, isn't it?
It hasn't gone away, Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's dependent on where you go. That way it's not based in everywhere. But I suppose politics is very hostile. And I suppose she was asked a difficult question regarding the 38% cuts to community development, and she answered the way we do in politics. Now we get hostile, we get visceral, we create another, and what she was doing there was just creating another, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting, because the issue I wanted to begin with, because it's something you've been involved with before you were elected, which was the issue of, we'll call it homelessness because it is an umbrella term, but at the time when I heard her say that, I thought, well, you probably don't have too many homeless people in the places that you're talking about. These are problems that you don't see, that we have to deal with, that are unique almost to city environment. Tell us, what is your take on I mean, we get headlines when we have a tragedy like we had yesterday, and the point I've been saying to people is that it was a tragedy, but it was an avoidable tragedy. What was your initial response when you heard of that?
I mean, initial response myself was shame, and it was self-shame. I mean, whether I like it or not, I am part of a system, an establishment now, and I have an elected role on Dublin City Council, and a person died cold, lonely, only kind of 200 yards away from where City Hall is. Mm-hmm. My initial reaction was shame. Yes, I also thought it was avoidable, but then what kicks in is the debate, and the debate that's not really representative of what's actually going on the ground. Mm-hmm. People talking about we need to give people beds. My phone rings 20, 25 times a day, and it's not people looking for beds, they're looking for homes. Yeah. I suppose that's where I think the debate gets skewed a little bit.
Something, if I could put to you, to me, and I interviewed the Lord Mayor of Dublin yesterday, and obviously this subject came up. And I interviewed the previous Lord Mayor about it, and it was almost like there was a different approach, almost culturally he saw it in a different terms. Now, I'm not going to make value judgment about that, but the point I made to both of them is that should we not have some basic value for the city around the concept of shelter? In other words, at the very least, now I know homelessness is much more complex, but at the very least, people who want beds and a roof over their head should be given that.
and a safe roof.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they do say this at the moment. They say that there's accommodations out there that they don't want.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking to people as the street as they did when I used to go out with the inner city helping homeless. I mean, a lot of people just didn't feel safe going into these camps. There's no kind of dry, so to speak, hostels. There's drug addiction, and a lot of them, the first thing you're asked for when you go into one is if you want drugs, and people just don't feel safe sleeping in them environments. So yeah, I absolutely think at a very minimum we should have safe sleeping environments where people can go to sleep and not have to worry about having their items stolen, being attacked, being offered drugs. And I think that's not there at the moment, and it's a real detriment to the city itself.
Yeah, I mean, something I've been saying for a few years is that I can't understand why there is, why there is the problem when we've got so many vacant properties. Even if you just have a look around from Molesworth Street the other night, you only have to go 50 or 100 metres either side. You had Leinster House, a lot of spare space in the evening. I'm not going to say you should be putting them in the chamber. You had a church around the corner. You have the Masonic Centre beside it. All of these places could have taken, even if you just stuck them in the hall. The idea to me of having to sleep rough must be just it must be very, very close to ending it all when people reach that. You've been doing a lot of outreach work in that. Is that what's
well? I haven't actually done it in a couple of months now, but I did do a lot beforehand. My sense when I was doing the outreach work is you really see, you see a lot of goodness in people. You'd be going out and you inner city helping homeless, you'd be offering people sandwiches, little lunch packs and that, and you'd even offer them, and they'd take it and they'd be grateful, and you'd offer them another one, and people wouldn't take it. They'd say, no, the guy down the street would probably need it. There's a lot of goodness, and it's not, it nearly feels that people aren't like on the street. It's almost a face where they're just so like they don't really have a selfish bone in their body. You just kind of feel happy with what you have. I seen Christy the other day talking about kind of a lady being offered a pillow and telling them, Christy, I'm in the Hilton now. Yeah. I mean, I think that goes down to the base human goodness that's in these people, where they aren't selfish, and the state, just because they're not demanding a lot, the state seems happy enough to just forget about these people for the last couple of years.
Yeah, because what brought it home to me a couple of years ago when I was looking into the subject, and I interviewed a guy, he was Eastern European, and he had got nicked for stealing a coat. I mean, it sounds so basic, doesn't it? You're sleeping out, so you steal a coat. Now, when he got nicked and he was being held, he then decided that it was better to extend his sentence, where, he'd be in prison, but at least he'd be warm and he would have some meals, whereas otherwise he was going to get chucked out, and he was going to go out and steal a coat again just to stay warm. It seemed to me a vicious cycle, and for people to say prison is better than sleeping on the streets, that tells you everything you need to know.
It's a sad indictment of the city, and then you kind of, there's this kind of mentality which comes from which comes from some people, where people don't have to be on the street, and it's a choice that some people make. And it goes back to this kind of the incident that happened in the Phoenix Park a couple of years ago, where the gentleman died in a sleeping bag, and they found out that he had a bit of money in his bank account. Nobody takes into account the kind of the mental health difficulties. Nobody takes into account the homelessness. In a lot of ways, it's a health problem as well as things, and these are not being addressed. They're not even being discussed. They're not even in the political narrative. And it goes down to our own inherent lack of empathy with the establishment in this country. Yeah.
Now, there was a statement put out yesterday from the Lord Mayor's office, and I haven't really been able to get any follow-up on it, but I just wondered, did it come up at the council meeting the other night? And that was the Archbishop's call for a summit on homelessness. Now, as I say, on the face of it, it seems like a fairly positive idea. But was it discussed at all the other night?
It was discussed in the sense that it was discussed in a political way, in the sense that some people were criticising Alan Kelly for not meeting the Lord Mayor before this, and he cancelled the meeting a couple of weeks ago. Some people highlighting the fact that the summit is now happening. But I mean, I don't want to see a summit. I want to see action. Yeah. I don't want to see any plans. Like, we just want to see action. You don't need to have a summit to know what's right here. People just need a bed at base level, and they need a home broadly. Who needs a summit for that? I certainly don't need the Archbishop coming in and telling us about it.
Is there clear demarcation lines between what's the role of central government and what's the role of local government? government.
It comes down to what's the role of right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know that way we can get into this theoretical debate of kind of central versus local government, but actually, you know what? The government are legislators, we're in charge of the city, there's people sleeping and then dying on their streets. I don't care whose role there is, somebody just needs to act.
Yeah.
And it's very simple what we need. We need beds, shelters and homes. We don't need debate, we don't need summits, we don't need grandiose statements from people in politics, we just need action.
Yeah. What I found interesting watching the council meetings is that there's some good proposals coming through, but the big elephant in the room I always find is the market. In other words, I was listening to, say, Michael O'Brien, and everything he said was terrific. If there was no, what we would call, capitalist market there, you'd be able to do all of these things. Isn't that really the issue in one sense of the word, that whether it's local government or whether it's central government, unless you have an impact, unless you become a market force, you're always going to have that equality. That's what capitalism does. It produces inequality.
Yeah,
now, if you're at one end of it, that's fine. If you're at the other end of it, you are seriously squeezed, as we discovered.
Yeah, no, I think if you look at it like that, but then some people might also say that capitalism has a price to pay in a lot of ways, and I suppose if capitalism might be able, if it's generating that much income, capitalism might be able to solve it. At a base level, somebody needs to solve it. I can't knock at somebody's door and say, or somebody on the street and say, don't worry, socialism will set you free.
Of course.
Or don't worry, we're going to get rid of capitalism, because we're not. The revolution isn't coming. What we need to do is just have a bit of fighting. It's not about capitalism, it's not about kind of any different political ideology. It's about priority. The priority of somebody. I mean, as Christy said, we've sent people to the moon in this. So I mean, let's have our Sputnik moment. Let's stop all this money going into kind of to celebrate in 1916 and that. And I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's just and good. But actually, let's have our Sputnik moment of actually saying, let's kind of get people stop from sleeping on our streets.
That's a very, very interesting one, you should say that. Are you suggesting that perhaps when it comes to dealing with homelessness, we're not always targeting the right areas? And I'll give you an example. By a strange coincidence, I turned on Dublin Community Television this morning, and what they were showing was the World Cup, which I'm sure you watched.
I did.
No, you didn't. This was the World Cup for the homeless.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, I can't work. I just had a quick look, and I couldn't find out exactly how much was funded for this, because they sent a crew over to Poland to film. Now, and then I thought, is this getting Monty Python? Do you come back and you're on the streets after you get knocked out of the World Cup? But it seemed that somewhere in the region between 40 and 50,000 was spent on producing this. Now, it was over a year ago that it was produced, and I thought, 50 grand is nice if you're the cameraman and you're going out to do that, but does it make a blind bit of difference to the guys who are allegedly on the homeless football team? And what difference is it going to make after the tournament is over? Now, I'm not knocking any of the good side of it, but it just seemed to me that 50 grand could have been used better to help the homeless.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it comes down to the spectacle of action and people, the theatre of action. People look and saying, look how well we're doing, and you get a photo shoot and people get a nice picture and it's great, and then some people go home to their nice comfy beds and kind of get the money that they get are working in the homeless services, and some people go out to their sleeping bag on the side of the street. I just think that's all very well and good. We need to stop these kind of big. We need to stop these. Are we talking about capitalism? I mean, there is an industry of poverty in this country, very much so, and I think that needs to be addressed in a lot of ways. And that comes down to these Catholic associations running housing programs, these trusts, which is all big industries based, like kind of where people are earning a lot of money to work with people kind of who are homeless, and I genuinely don't see any difference. There's more people now on the street than there ever was, despite the money that's gone into it in the past decade.
I've got into a lot of trouble for saying something similar in that sense of the word.
Yeah, I get into a lot of trouble for these things, but at some point we need to stop lying to ourselves.
That's my point, in the sense that if we are going to use public funding, we should be primarily targeting those who it's intended, rather than the infrastructure. Is that something you would support?
It's something I'd usually support, and I see that at kind of homeless service level. I see it in community development, where more money goes into the structures, into the systems, into kind of the pay packets. I mean, people should get paid for the work they do, but the work they do should also have results. And the results should be kind of, your intended action should be what you're set up to do. If you're set up to get people off the streets, I want to know how many people you're getting off the streets. If you're set up to get people out of poverty, I want to know how you're doing that and how that's being achieved and what you're measuring it by.
Very modern, Gary. As I say, it's something I would agree with you 100%. In other words, we determine how effective some of this public spending is. Yeah. I should pay tribute to the guys. The game I saw, Ireland homeless beat Argentina homeless 7-2. So that was in Poznan in August 2013. So I am going to pay tribute to the guys, if nothing else. Your achievement has been recognised. But something now that is coming up next week, Gary, the 10th of December is considered to be a very big day. When we went back I had a look back at I think it was the October council meeting, and you were one of a few councillors at the time. Before we knew how big this was going to be, you were a group of councillors who said, support the Right to Water campaign. Did you expect it to snowball to the degree that it has?
I did, Mick, and the reason I expected it is because my first real kind of soiree into politics was canvassing pre-election for the local elections. I mean, the inner city, as you know, is very diverse. We've got rich, we've got poor, we've got reservoirs. No matter where I knocked, a lot of people were just, the water was just a step too far for them. And it wasn't, and there was you could sense that. It was kind of, I remember I knocked down East Wall there and I was speaking to one girl, and she was a fairly kind of a middle class lady. She had a child. And she just genuinely told me that after she paid her rent, after she kind of paid wherever she needed to pay for her son, and that she literally, there was one day a week, and she brought me and showed me her fridge. She had a lot of Tupperware boxes, and there was one day a week where she simply couldn't eat. And she asked me, the question was, what do I do when the water charges come in? Do I pick a different day? I can pick another day. And this was a fairly kind of, she had a decent enough job, and it was kind of like, this was just a step too far for people. It is about water, and it's not about water. It's about the death by the thousand cuts. This is kind of, this is the one that's really kind of destroyed or broke the camel's back, if we can throw around an awful cliche.
Yeah, because in many respects, I mean, if you go back to 2007, okay, we were all a bit confused in 2007. By about 2009, quite a few of us understood what was going on here. And what was going on here is that you went into the bookie shop with some money you borrowed from me.
Yeah.
Then your horse lost, and I had to pick up the tab. In a nutshell, that's what it was.
And absolutely,
it was casino capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah, and for somebody who spent 7 years working in a bookie, that analogy went very true for me. It was a case, and it was austerity for some, and now what we're very much seeing is recovery for some.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a former minister in the paper the other day talking about Ireland Inc. And I mean, that just physically made, and also the same day that gentleman was found dead outside the doll, that made this concept of Ireland Inc. makes me sick.
We're all in it together.
Well, not, yeah, exactly, but we're not. There's a lot of people being left behind.
Well, the two analogies I've used is the one which was interestingly, I used the analogy of the Titanic about 4 years ago, and I was saying Fine Gael were the most honest party, because what they were saying is, we've got lifeboats for 70%, and you can work out who's going to be the 30%. That 30% might even be 40%, but the other 60% seem to be doing okay. In fact, some of them are doing much better, even vis-a-vis their neighbours. Isn't that really essentially what we've had for the last 4 or 5 years? That well, it's Ireland Inc., but you're on the bench and I'm actually on the team.
You're not even on the bench. You've no chance of coming on. That was under Fianna Fáil, where they thought maybe you could come on.
Because we made 12 substitutes.
Yeah, you know, that way it was a case that every rising ship will lift all tides. It doesn't even, that was against that mentality to begin with, but that's not even there anymore. What we have is this puritanical, nearly thing of, we're the good people and you're there, kind of, we have soup houses for you.
Yeah.
You know, that way we're really getting back to an age where it's just, there's a lack of empathy in politics.
It's quite interesting, because you say it's getting back to an age. It's getting to the age that I grew up in, where it was actually quite a small middle class. It was a very small elite class, but that elite class has never changed. But it had quite a significant working class, or what we would call a labour class, is the way I will put it. Now, to a degree, I wasn't here for the 80s, so I'm not going to compare with that, but it always struck me, again using an analogy, that what we got in the so-called Celtic Tigers, we all went out to the restaurant, but some people got to drink the most expensive wine, and some people got to drink fizzy water, but we all got to split the bill, and that is
sure.
Whether you drank or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it isn't fair. Take St Laurence O'Till School down in Sherry Street, a stone throw from where we are at the moment. Mark Hamden, the principal of that school, often tells a story about how the Celtic Tiger arrived for him in that school when there was a couple of cars in the driveway in the morning time and the children stopped getting scurvy.
Yeah.
You know
Okay,
that way?
yeah.
So it was kind of like, okay, maybe we all benefited from the Celtic Tiger, but you need to take...
I'm not saying we all benefited.
No, I know you're not, but that sentiment is out there.
Yeah.
That we all partied. Actually, some of us just stopped getting diseases.
I agree. Yes, I agree. So some people got the entree. They didn't get the main course at all. But because we're coming up to this, how do you feel it's going to go next week? Because I was at a water protest about 2 weeks ago, and one of your fellow councillors was openly calling for regime change, and I thought that's probably a step too far for a lot of people.
For me, it's not about regime change. If there's 100,000 people out in the tent, it's still not going to take the government down. It's more likely probably to make sure the government holds on. It's just about getting people out in the street, empowering people to say no more. We've had enough. I don't think there's going to be 100,000 people out there. It's a Wednesday at 1 o'clock, but I think because it is a Wednesday at 1 o'clock, there'll be at least 20,000 people out there, and the city's going to know they were there.
Last but by no means least, I was talking to another friend of mine about a week ago, somebody who's quite well off, who lives on the south side, a nice leafy suburb, works in the finance trade, and said, okay, we might not be going out marching, but we're the ones who are benefiting from the marchers, because as this person said, 2 weeks ago it was $300, now it's $150, and going down. All we have to do is sit there, and this will be the vanguard. Isn't that the sad irony of it all?
It is the sad irony, but what are you gonna do? It was still $300 for somebody who simply wouldn't been able to pay $300 rather than somebody who would have been, but will benefit from it anyway.
Before we go, Gary, this is going to be the last live one for me before Christmas, so anybody you would like to wish greetings to?
It's a bit early for me to be giving greetings. I'm too much of a Grinch for that. But greetings from all Mick's listeners here in Dublin City FM. I hope you all have a nice Christmas.
Look, I'm going to play out, for the last 15 years or so I've done radio, and every so often you come across somebody who has genuine talent, and the one I came across was a lady called Maire Dignan, and she was the most self-effacing. She would rather be a nurse than a star. I'm going to play out with a song called Home that Maire wrote about 3 years ago. It's for everybody out there who's ever been homeless, ever been insecure about their tenure. This is Maire Dignan with Home. I'm Mick Fitz. This is Gary Gannon.
Goodbye, folks.
We'll see you again in 2015.
To go home. Why can't you mend his heart full of pain? The scars that run deep and eyes full of shame. I close my eyes and I'll take a deep breath, and I'll click my heels twice, and I will be there, and I will be there, and I will be there. But if I follow the light, will it lead me back home? But that light hurts my eyes, and the dark suits the pain. So I'll sit here and wait and rest a short while. You see, this path feels so steep, too many mountains to climb. I close my eyes and I'll take a deep breath, and I'll click my heels one to go.